touch isn't just a physical act. It's a language our bodies speak long before our minds find the words. When someone's hand lingers on yours, or a hug lasts just a second longer, there's a story unfolding beneath the skin. In this documentary, we'll explore why touch can feel more intimate, more revealing, and sometimes more honest than anything we say out loud. Because the truth is, our bodies confess feelings our mouths hesitate to admit. And once you understand how touch shapes desire, trust, and emotional connection, you start to see relationships in a completely different light. One powerful insight we'll dive into is how the brain responds to touch with a cocktail of bonding hormones that can deepen attraction and vulnerability faster than conversation ever could. Another key discovery you'll explore is why different types of touch, whether playful, comforting, or sensual, can shift the emotional climate of a relationship in seconds, often revealing the true state of intimacy more accurately than words. One of the first senses we develop as humans, and fascinatingly, it's the one we rely on even before we understand language. Long before we speak, we feel. A baby doesn't comprehend words, but it recognizes warmth, safety, and love through skin to skin contact, and that tells us something powerful. Touch is a primal language, an emotional code that reveals more than our words ever could. In fact, the way we touch and allow ourselves to be touched often exposes truths we never say out loud. You might tell someone you're fine, but your body tenses when they reach for your hand. Or you might whisper, "I don't care anymore," yet melt into the arms of the person saying goodbye. If you've ever had a moment where someone's touch made you feel understood without a single word spoken, you already know how deeply touch shapes our emotional and sexual lives. What makes touch so unique is how it slips under our psychological defenses. Words get filtered, analyzed, doubted, but touch goes straight to the nervous system. When someone's hand brushes your cheek or fingers trace your back, you're not thinking your way through it, you're feeling it. That sensation travels through the skin and activates nerve endings that send signals to the brain, triggering emotional responses faster than we can consciously process. It's why a simple caress from someone you're attracted to can send chills down your spine. What's even more intriguing is that touch can communicate emotions with near perfect accuracy. Research has found that simple touch can convey love, anger, fear, gratitude, sympathy, and trust without seeing the person's face or hearing their voice. Imagine being blindfolded and having a stranger touch your arm and still being able to identify the emotion they're expressing. That's the power of this silent language. The body doesn't just interpret touch emotionally, it responds chemically. When we experience affectionate or intimate touch from someone we trust or desire, the brain releases oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. This chemical has a profound influence on connection and desire. Oxytocin makes us feel safe, seen, and open. It lowers stress and builds a sense of closeness. What's surprising, though, is how quickly it can transform a relationship dynamic. One moment, you may feel uncertain, guarded, or unsure of your feelings for someone, then an unexpected moment of physical closeness shifts everything. Maybe it's the first time they rest their head on your shoulder, or your hands touch under the table, or you share a quiet hug that lasts just a breath longer than usual. It doesn't have to be sexual. Sometimes the most intimate forms of touch are the gentlest ones. Touch doesn't create love on its own, but it accelerates the process of emotional bonding faster than almost anything else. Something beautifully human about the fact that touch reveals what we truly feel. Words can mask reality, but touch exposes it. Think about how you greet someone you love versus someone you tolerate. The embrace feels different. The energy, the softness, the time you allow yourself to linger, it changes. The truth is, your body often knows what your heart hasn't admitted yet. Psychology has shown that the warmth or coldness of touch in a relationship often predicts its future more accurately than the couple's self-reported happiness. Two people might say they're fine, growing distance in how they touch each other. Intimacy is quietly fading. Touch also shapes desire in profound and often unexpected ways. We tend to assume that sexual attraction begins in the mind through visual appeal or psychological intrigue. Those are important, of course, but physical touch can awaken the desire in a uniquely powerful way. The skin is not just a protective layer, it's the largest erogenous zone of the body. It's wired with millions of nerve receptors designed to interpret sensation. Some respond to light, slow, sensual touch. Others react to firmer pressure or warmth. When the right kind of touch reaches the right part of the body, activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine, the same chemical involved in attraction, motivation, and pleasure. This is why sometimes you don't fall for someone the moment you meet them. You fall for them the moment they touch you in a way that feels emotionally tuned to you. A touch that feels thoughtful, attentive, and attuned to your needs can spark erotic chemistry that words alone never could. But touch isn't only about desire, it's about safety. Safe touch, meaning touch received from someone who respects your boundaries and understands your emotional comfort, sets the foundation for trust. Without that, physical intimacy feels hollow, rushed, or even overwhelming. Many people assume that physical intimacy creates emotional intimacy, but it's the quality of touch determines whether that happens. If touch feels rushed or disconnected, it can lead to emotional distancing rather than bonding. Yet when touch is attuned, when it feels present, patient, and caring, it opens the door for vulnerability. Our skin becomes an interface for emotional truth. It becomes the place where fear softens, egos dissolve, and closeness grows. And that is one of the reasons why after a conflict, a hug can break down walls more effectively than an apology. The nervous system relaxes, defenses drop, and connection becomes possible again. The absence of touch can be just as revealing as it is present. Touch deprivation, often called skin hunger, is a real psychological phenomenon. When we go long periods without affectionate or warm physical contact, the body feels a kind of emotional starvation. People become more irritable, lonely, anxious, or disconnected. This is one of the reasons why breakups, even from relationships that weren't fulfilling, can feel physically painful. Losing regular touch, especially touch that provided comfort or intimacy, creates a withdrawal effect. The brain, accustomed to oxytocin and dopamine, suddenly experiences a drop, and the body goes into emotional detox. It's not just the person we miss, it's the emotional nourishment their touch provided. Touch can also act as a mirror, reflecting the emotional climate of a relationship. Healthy relationships often maintain small rituals of touch. A kiss on the forehead before sleeping, a hand on the lower back while walking, fingers intertwined during a conversation. These little gestures create micro bonds. They send continuous signals that say, I'm here, I choose you. You matter to me. When those small rituals begin to fade, it's rarely about business or routine. It's often a symptom of emotional withdrawal. Touch becomes mechanical or transactional. A quick peck replaces a lingering kiss. Hugs become one-armed, quick, and empty. The relationship may still have conversations, routines, and shared responsibilities, but intimacy is thinning beneath the surface. And interestingly, partners often notice the loss of touch long before they are ready to admit what it means. Different forms of touch carry different emotional messages. A supportive touch on the arm communicates care and reassurance. A playful push or tickle can bring back lightness and joy. A soft brush of the lips against the shoulder or neck can awaken desire. Touch is a versatile emotional dial, capable of shifting moods, deepening connection, or sparking attraction. What's remarkable is that the body can distinguish each type of touch and respond accordingly. If touch is rushed, tense, or distracted, the nervous system picks up on it, and emotional connection weakens. But when touch is intentional and mindful, even a brief moment of contact can feel intimate. The difference isn't in how long the touch lasts, but how present the person is while giving it. Touch is also deeply influenced by culture. In some cultures, physical affection is woven into daily life. Kiss on the cheek, hold hands, embrace frequently. In others, touch is reserved, formal, or limited to romantic or familial relationships. These cultural norms shape our comfort with touch, but they don't change our biological need for it. Around the world, humans crave touch in different forms, yet the emotional circuitry beneath the skin is universal. What varies is how freely we express it. Some people grow up in households where affectionate touch is rare or uncomfortable, and they enter adulthood unsure of how to give or receive physical affection. Others come from touch-rich environments and struggle to understand partners who need more time or space. Matching touch languages in relationships is just as important as matching love languages. Some people feel most connected through physical closeness, others through words, acts, or time together. When touch expectations don't align, both partners can feel misunderstood. One of the most eye-opening discoveries in relationship research is how accurately touch can measure the emotional health of a couple. Therapists often observe couples in their first few minutes of entering a room. Do they sit close? Do their knees angle toward one another away? Do they share small touches throughout the session? These nonverbal cues often reveal more than the words exchanged during therapy. Couples who maintain affectionate touch even during difficult phases tend to navigate conflict more successfully. They use touch to soothe rather than avoid. Touch becomes a bridge, not a distraction. Meanwhile, couples who withdraw physically often disengage emotionally as well. The body is telling a story the mind isn't ready to speak. When it comes to sexual relationships, touch takes on even more significance. Sexual desire isn't just about arousal or physical attraction, it's about emotional attunement. People often believe that great sex starts with passion or performance, but much of it begins with touch outside the bedroom. A partner's hand on your waist while cooking together, a gentle stroke on the back while passing by, a kiss placed thoughtfully on the neck before leaving the house. All of these create an erotic foundation. They maintain sexual energy and anticipation. Without this ongoing physical connection, sexual moments can feel disconnected or forced. The body might go through the motions, but the heart isn't engaged. What keeps desire alive isn't frequency, it's quality, especially the quality of non-sexual touch. The skin has memory. It remembers how someone made you feel through their hands. It remembers the comfort of a partner's embrace, the excitement in a lover's fingertips, the warmth of a parent's hug. Touch imprints emotional experiences onto the body. You've probably experienced a moment when someone touched you and it transported you back to a memory, either cherished or painful. Because touch is stored in implicit memory, the kind that shapes emotional reactions without us consciously realizing it. Some people crave touch because it has historically been a source of comfort and love. Others avoid it because it has been associated with unpredictability or discomfort. Understanding this can transform how we approach each other physically. It reminds us to be gentle with one another's history. Even technology hasn't replaced touch. Despite video calls, texting, and digital intimacy, something remains irreplaceable about physical closeness. You can hear affection in someone's voice, see it in their eyes, but touch activates a different layer of connection. Body responds in ways screens can't simulate. In fact, prolonged digital connection without physical contact can intensify longing rather than satisfy it. Humans were never wired for emotional connection through distance alone. We need proximity, warmth, and physical presence to feel truly bonded. If there's one thing that becomes clear, it's this touch is more than a physical act. It's a psychological language that speaks to our deepest human needs, to feel safe, desired, valued, and understood. We don't remember every word someone said to us, but we remember how they made us feel in their arms. We remember the electricity of a first touch, the comfort of a familiar embrace, the way someone held our hand when we needed strength. We remember the touch that healed us and the touch we're still waiting for. Touch shapes us in ways we rarely stop to think about. It's easy to assume that intimacy is built through conversations, shared experiences, or emotional vulnerability. There's a hidden layer beneath all of that, one that the body understands long before the mind catches up. Touch is more than a feeling on the skin. It's a language with grammar, rules, and meaning. It can build trust, spark attraction, soothe the nervous system, or expose emotional distance more accurately than words ever could. And what makes touch so fascinating is that it doesn't simply reflect the state of a relationship, it actively creates it. People often underestimate how deeply the body interprets touch. We tend to think of it as something we do on the surface. Yet the story of touch begins in the nervous system. Skin lies a complex network of receptors that translate physical sensation into emotional data. One of the most interesting discoveries in recent years is the existence of specialized nerve fibers called C-tactile afferents. These fibers are designed specifically for slow, gentle, intentional touch, the type we associate with affection, care, and intimacy. When someone we trust runs their fingertips lightly across our skin or holds us in a warm embrace, these nerve fibers send signals directly to the brain regions responsible for emotional processing, bonding, and reward. In other words, our bodies are biologically wired to treat affectionate touch as emotional nourishment. Helps explain why some forms of touch feel deeply connecting, while others fall flat or even feel uncomfortable. The body can tell when touch is given with care, presence, and emotional intent versus when it's rushed, distracted, or obligated. A quick, half-hearted hug doesn't activate the same emotional chemistry as a slow, mindful one. And this difference isn't subtle. Your nervous system responds within seconds. If the touch feels attuned, your brain releases oxytocin, which promotes feelings of trust, safety, and closeness. If the touch feels disconnected or forced, the body becomes tense, guarded, and less emotionally receptive. Is part of the reason why affectionate touch tends to decline in relationships that are emotionally drifting apart. Couples often assume their issue is communication or mismatched desire, when sometimes the earliest sign of distance appears in the body. The way they touch each other changes, not necessarily in obvious ways, but in subtle shifts. A kiss becomes shorter. A hug loses its warmth. Hands no longer reach for one another automatically. It's not always a conscious withdrawal. Sometimes the body stops giving what the heart is no longer fully invested in. And what's powerful is that this physical distance doesn't only reflect emotional change. It accelerates it. The less we touch, the harder connection becomes. We lose the biochemical support that touch provides. Oxytocin drops, stress rises, and the brain becomes more guarded. The emotional skin of the relationship becomes thinner, more reactive, more fragile. Not all touch communicates the same thing. One person can touch you in a way that feels grounding and safe, while another touches you in a way that triggers anxiety or discomfort. It's not just about technique. It's about emotional presence. Touch is relational. It has context. It carries history. The same gesture, like holding someone's hand, can feel affectionate, possessive, comforting, or dismissive depending on what the relationship has experienced. Our bodies store memories of how we've been touched over time. If we grew up in an environment where touch represented safety and affection, we tend to associate touch with closeness. But if touch was inconsistent, absent, or tied to conditional love, the body may develop a different relationship with it, one that's hesitant, uncertain, or even defensive. Because touch is so emotionally revealing, it becomes a kind of psychological barometer in relationships. Sometimes observe couples before they say a word. How do they sit? Do they lean toward each other? Do they make small, unconscious contact? Do they avoid it altogether? These nonverbal cues often speak louder than the verbal stories couples tell. Two people may come in insisting everything is fine, but the absence of touch, especially the absence of comfortable touch, tells a different story. Meanwhile, couples who maintain small rituals of physical connection, even during conflict or stress, tend to stay more emotionally resilient. They may disagree, argue, or misunderstand each other, but they don't lose sight of the physical bond that reinforces, we're still on the same team. Touch not only reveals emotional reality, it influences sexual desire in ways we rarely acknowledge. Many people think desire begins with sexual touch, but the truth is that non-sexual touch often lays the foundation for erotic connection. A hand on the lower back while walking together, a thumb brushing the inside of the wrist, a kiss on the shoulder while someone is cooking. These are moments that send signals to the brain. I see you. I feel you. I'm connected to you. And that sense of emotional attunement primes the nervous system for sexual openness. When touch outside the bedroom is affectionate, consistent, and emotionally tuned, the body enters intimate moments feeling safe, seen, and desired. But when the only touch that happens is sexual, the body may interpret intimacy as transactional rather than relational. It becomes harder to relax into desire because the emotional groundwork isn't there. Sexual chemistry itself is often misunderstood. People imagine it sparks instantly, but for many, chemistry is kindled through touch that feels aligned with their body and nervous system. Touch that matches their rhythm, pressure, timing, and sensitivity can awaken erotic responsiveness more reliably than visual or verbal stimulation. In fact, studies show that for many individuals, especially those who experience desire more responsively than spontaneously, arousal begins with emotional connection through touch rather than physical arousal alone. When the body feels emotionally safe, the erotic circuits open. Without that, the body protects itself and desire remains dormant. Touch also has a remarkable ability to regulate the nervous system. When we are seen held or gently stroked by someone we trust, the body shifts out of a stress response and into a state of calm. Heart rate slows, muscles relax, breathing deepens. This isn't metaphorical, it's measurable. Pleasant touch activates the parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest system, reducing cortisol levels and promoting relaxation. This is why a hug from the right person after a long day can feel like a reset. It's not just comforting emotionally, it's soothing biologically. Regulatory quality of touch is one reason why deprivation of touch can have such profound emotional consequences. Touch deprivation, sometimes called skin hunger, affects more people than we realize. In a world where digital connection has replaced much of our physical closeness, many individuals go weeks or months without meaningful, affectionate touch. Loneliness isn't just an emotional state, it's a sensory one. Without physical contact, the body feels a kind of emotional malnutrition. People become more anxious, more irritable, more disconnected, not just from others, but from themselves. The body misses the calming, validating, anchoring effect of human contact. Privation can even influence how people form attachments later, sometimes leading them to seek intense physical closeness too quickly, or avoid it altogether because the body no longer knows how to process it comfortably. Often talk about love languages, and physical touch is one of them, but the conversation tends to oversimplify it. Touch isn't only a preference someone has or doesn't have. It's a developmental language we learn through experience. Someone didn't receive healthy, nurturing touch growing up. They may not feel naturally drawn to it. But that doesn't mean they don't need it. It means they haven't learned the emotional vocabulary for it yet. With patience, safe experiences, communication, the body can relearn touch as something grounding, pleasurable, and relational rather than unfamiliar or overwhelming. It's never too late for the nervous system to form new associations. One of the most beautiful things about touch is its ability to revive relationships that feel emotionally faded. Small, intentional gestures can reopen emotional pathways that have become dormant. A couple can rebuild closeness not only through conversation or problem solving, but through reintroducing gentle, attuned touch. Holding hands while watching a movie, pausing for a 10-second hug each morning, resting a hand on the heart or cheek. These moments sound simple, almost too simple to make a difference, yet they begin restoring the emotional chemistry that relationships need to feel alive. When couples practice mindful touch, not for sexual initiation, not for routine, but for connection, they often find that desire returns more organically, emotional safety increases, and the body becomes receptive again. It's important to remember that touch doesn't affect everyone the same way. Some people feel most connected through constant physical closeness, while others need space to feel safe and grounded. Neither is wrong. Both are shaped by nervous system wiring, cultural conditioning, and emotional history. The key is compatibility, communication, and curiosity. Instead of assuming touch should happen a certain way, healthy relationships explore how each person experiences it. What kind of touch feels comforting? What kind feels bonding? What kind feels overwhelming or intrusive? Understanding these nuances doesn't make touch less romantic. It makes it more meaningful. If there is one thread running through all of this, it is that touch is not just a physical act. It's an emotional experience that writes itself into the body. We remember how someone touched us long after we forget what they said. We can recall the first time someone held our face gently, or the way someone pulled us close in a moment of vulnerability, or the warmth of a hand intertwined with ours on a cold night. We also remember the absence of touch, the nights we cried alone, the hand we wished would reach for us, the distance that slowly grew where closeness once lived. Touch leaves emotional fingerprints that linger in the nervous system. In a world full of noise, touch remains a quiet truth teller. It cuts through defensiveness, bypasses overthinking, and speaks directly to the part of us that still longs to feel held, seen, and safe. It is the one form of intimacy that cannot be faked. The body knows when touch is real. It knows when it's gentle, when it's loving, when it's curious, when it's rushed, or when it's absent but needed. Words can confuse, but touch clarifies. It says what we feel, what we fear, and what we desire, often long before we are ready to speak it.